I stumbled out of bed with a head that felt like it was going to explode. Once in the bathroom, I quickly downed some aspirin. My stomach felt like it was going to rebel, so I hung by the toilet for about 10 minutes. During that time it all came back to me. My name is Ron Jameson, and when I returned from work yesterday, my loving wife Chrissy blindsided me. She started by telling me that she loved me, but then explained that she had been seeing another man for the past year and was in love with him. She described it as a simple act of caring. The man, who she refused to name, had been in a horrible car accident in which his wife was killed while he walked away without a scratch. He felt terribly guilty about this. Chrissy explained that she had started out trying to help him deal with his emotional pain, and they had fallen in love. Yes, she admitted that they had had sex. Chrissy even admitted that sometimes the sex was very good. Of course, throughout this entire nightmare of a conversation, she insisted that she loved me and would eventually return to me. But as long as this man needed her, she was going to be there for him. She assured me that she would be there for our kids and me as well. The man was considerably younger than her, and she knew that eventually he would move on, but for however long he needed her, she wanted to be there for him. This was about the worst nightmare any married man could walk into. Stunned, I did what just about any man would do. I accused my wife of being a 304 and a hooker. At that point, Chrissy unloaded on me. She told me she was totally disappointed in my reaction. Chrissy actually had the audacity to say to me that if I really loved her, I would accept the situation. She told me that in her wedding vows, I promised to love, honor, and cherish her. It was clear that Chrissy was disappointed and angry with me. I was beyond furious, and to keep from hitting her, I started drinking and yelling. When I calmed down a little, I asked her how she would like it if I found another woman. Chrissy said, "Who would want me?" According to her, I was an overweight middle-aged man with thinning hair. She also warned me that if I tried to divorce her, she'd ruin me. I was beyond livid and totally at a loss as to what I could or should do. At that moment my brain was in total meltdown. I couldn't process anything logically. Perhaps not my finest moment, but I continued to drink and rage at Chrissy. She packed a bag and announced that she was leaving to go to her lover until I could calm down and accept the situation. I didn't remember much after that. As I sat on her bed, I decided to take stock. Chrissy was right. I was middle-aged and my hair was thinning. I had to admit that I was also about 20 pounds overweight. I couldn't do anything about being middle-aged, but I knew I could do something about the hair and the weight. But before I did anything, I had to find out where my kids were. It was Saturday morning, so they should be here at home. A quick search of the house showed that they weren't. So where the hell did Chrissy stash them? I was about to call her parents when I heard a car pull up in the driveway. When I looked out the window, it was Chrissy's car. I could see our kids getting out and heading toward the house. I met Chrissy at the front door. "Good, I see you're sober," she said with a snap in her voice. "Where were the kids?" I asked with a snap in my voice. "They were with me." "I couldn't very well leave the kids with you," she replied. "You didn't take them to your sex toys house, did you?" "Ron, watch your language," she snapped again. "They were already there," she said, as though that was absolutely natural. "My friend is a wonderfully kind person. You, on the other hand, were disgraceful yesterday. I wouldn't dare have left them with you." Fair point about me, I admit it. "But why didn't you take the kids to your parents' place?" "They weren't home," Chrissy said as she breezed by me and went upstairs. I followed her into our bedroom. "Are you here to stay, or are you going running back to your lover?" "Oh, please, Ron, stop being so childish. I told you how things are going to be. I have no intention of arguing with you about it. The discussion is over. Accept it or don't, that's your choice. Even though you're acting like an idiot, I still love you. And as I told you, when he no longer needs me, I'll be back full time. So what do we do now?" I'm fighting to keep my cool. "Right now, I'm going to pack a few things because I'm going to spend a few days with my friend until you finally cool down and accept the situation." "What about the kids?" I thought that might shame her into staying. It didn't. "If you don't want to watch them, call my parents." "I'm sure they will," I said. Chrissy then packed another bag of clothes and left. At this point, my head was ready to explode. However, I knew I had to keep it together for the kids, but I wasn't going to take Chrissy's affair lying down. No self-respecting man would. After Chrissy left, I checked on the kids and asked them if they had any homework. All three said they did. I told them to get on it right away. There was a lot of moaning and groaning until I informed them that when they were finished, we'd go over to Pop and Grammy's house. They're Chrissy's parents. The kids all cheered. They loved going there because Pop was helping all three of my kids build go-karts. They had been working on them off and on for several months, and the carts had to be close to being finished. Chrissy's parents, Sam and Mary, lived on a small farm about 15 minutes away. They were both retired. Sam loved tinkering and, in addition to doing a little farming, enjoyed building and repairing things. He had a very substantial workshop he used for all his projects, and that's where they worked on the carts when time permitted. When I could, I would lend a hand. I'm a certified dealer mechanic for the local Ford dealership. It's the largest dealership in the Tri-County area. I wanted to talk to Chrissy's parents to see if they knew about her boyfriend and, more importantly, if they knew who he was. I also wanted to get their advice on what I should do. I had always had a great relationship with them. Since my parents lived 3 states away, I considered Sam and Mary as my surrogate mother and father. However, I was a little apprehensive because I was afraid they would take Chrissy's side in this whole mess. That would totally destroy our relationship. I went room to room checking that the kids were doing their homework, and they were. It was then that it struck me just how much my kids were my pride and joy. Ron, the oldest, was 16. Only the closest family members called him Ron. We started that to avoid confusion about whether Chrissy was talking to her son or me. He was quite a football player but wasn't big enough to get a scholarship to college. Sally, the year younger, was a typical teenager. She loved to push boundaries but was a great student. Kyle, the baby, was only 11. He hated being called the baby, but Chrissy still did it. Kyle was a happy accident. We weren't planning on having any more kids when Chrissy discovered she was pregnant, but Kyle had been such a happy-go-lucky child that he was a joy to have around. While the kids worked upstairs, I made myself a cup of coffee and started to make a list. I had a lot to do and didn't know how much time I'd have to do it. The first thing I did was call my boss, Bob B. Clarkson, and fill him in on my problem. I had worked for the dealership since it was founded 23 years ago, and Bob had been my boss for at least 15 years. If I do say so myself, I was one of the better mechanics at the dealership. Bob listened to my tale of woe and was very sympathetic as his son had gone through a messy divorce a year before. It had gotten really nasty to the point where his son's ex-wife, Carol, accused him of molesting their daughter. "Damn," I said, "that is one witch." "Tell me about it," Bob said with evident bitterness. It was touch and go for about a week. We expected the police to arrest Gary at any minute. These are the kind of accusations that are devastating and almost impossible to disprove. The police run scared every time a woman starts pointing the finger at a man. The only thing that saved Gary was his ex-mother-in-law. When Carol told her mother that Gary had molested her granddaughter, I think she thought that would be the final nail in Gary's coffin. Everyone knows Bev is ruthless. What I didn't know was that she had an equal share of fairness. She immediately took her granddaughter out of preschool and took her to her general practitioner. Bev had the doctor examine her granddaughter to determine if she had been molested. The doctor stated unequivocally that there was no way her granddaughter had been molested. Armed with that information, Bev marched over to the police department and told them if they pursued charges against Gary, she would testify against her daughter. Then Bev told Carol that if she pursued this course of action, she would tell the court about her drug problems, and she'd lose her daughter. "God bless Bev," I said, somewhat shocked to learn what women are capable of doing to get their way. "I'm in," Bob replied. "So if there is anything I can do to help you, let me know. Ron, if it's within my power to make it happen, I will." Since I had 12 personal days and 6 weeks of vacation time accrued, I asked for the following week off. Bob readily agreed, and in fact he told me if I needed to take all of my personal days and my vacation together, he'd work it out for me. As it turned out, that is precisely what I did. "There is something else you can help me with," I explained. "I need the name of a good divorce lawyer if you know one." "That's easy," he said. "Use the attorney my son used. He cleaned Carol's clock. Gary got primary custody of their daughter, gets to live in the house, and Carol has to pay child support. His name is Dwight Tucker. I think I still have his number here somewhere. The messier my son's divorce got, the more we communicated through lawyers. It got to where I started hearing Mr. Tucker's name in my sleep. Bob took about a minute and finally found Dwight Tucker's card with the number. I called the attorney's office. I didn't expect anyone to be there on a Saturday, but I figured I'd leave a message. Luck was with me because not only was Mr. Tucker there, but his secretary told me he had a cancellation and could see me if I could make it to the office in 30 minutes. I told the kids that I had to go out for an hour or so and to behave. I then jumped in my car and made it to Mr. Tucker's office in 20 minutes. Dwight Tucker appeared to be in his early or mid-30s. He was a good-looking man, a couple of inches shorter than me. He had deep blue eyes and a very welcoming smile. I had no doubt that Dwight scored big points with the lady juries. "What can I do for you today?" Dwight asked after I had settled myself into a chair. "My wife told me yesterday that she is cheating on me with a younger man," I said, feeling my face flush with embarrassment and anger. I laid out as concisely as I could what had transpired the previous day. Dwight sat taking notes, shaking his head when I told him that my wife claimed to still love me but was going to keep sleeping with the guy. He stopped me. "Let me get this straight." Dwight's eyes darkened a little. "Your wife says she loves you but is going to keep screwing this poor lost soul?" My face flushed big time with embarrassment. I just nodded. "Okay, go ahead," Dwight prompted. I went on to say that Chrissy had gotten angry with me when I refused to go along with her plan. I also admitted that I called her a 304 and a hooker. Painfully, I explained that Chrissy had laughed when I asked her how she would feel if I went out and got a woman. It was extremely painful and embarrassing to admit how Chrissy belittled me as a man and told me I'd never be able to find a woman that would want me. Not only that, but she promised she would ruin me if I tried to divorce her. "She actually said all that to you?" Dwight asked, his voice filled with incredulity. "No offense, Mr. Fremont, but your wife is either one of the most callous persons ever or she has some serious mental issues." "None taken," I sighed. "I think so myself." I then explained how she had left the kids at her lover's house yesterday when we had our argument, and they spent the night there. Dwight's head snapped up for a second and he smiled. Then he put his head down and wrote something. "Okay, now for the $64,000 question. What do you want to do?" Dwight asked as he looked up and steepled his fingers. I thought for a moment and then answered, "I can't live with the situation the way it is. I don't know if I can get past this, but for sure I don't want to get destroyed in a divorce and I don't want to lose my kids." Dwight shook his head in sympathy. "That seems to be the new manner with women who are facing divorce because of their bad behavior. But rest assured, I'm going to bust my butt to limit any damage she can do to you. If you do divorce, you'll wind up with at least 50% of your joint assets. I will warn you that the courts don't give a tinker's damn about infidelity, so I'm going to have to pay alimony and child support." I said, much deflated, "Despite your assurances, it seems like I'm going to be taken to the cleaners." "Yes, that is a possibility, but that's why we have to strike now and strike hard," Dwight said as he studied his notes. "Right now, your wife has abandoned your marital house and worse than that, she took your children to her lover's place and left them unattended. That's a big no-no with some of the courts. You currently have custody of your kids and I think we can keep it that way. I'm going to try and get an emergency restraining order against your wife, which will allow you to remain in the house at least temporarily. The longer you are there, the stronger your case gets for primary custody. If we can get that, you won't have to pay child support." "Does your wife work?" "Yes, part-time at the hospital. Chrissy works a shift on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays," I answered. Then a thought came to me which I voiced, "That's probably where she met this bozo." Dwight agreed and then asked how much she made. I explained that she made about $25,000 a year, while I made about $80,000. "I have to ask a crucial question, and I want you to think hard about it," Dwight said as he looked directly at me. "Do you still love her? Do you want to try to work things out?" I put my head down and stared at the floor for a long time. When I looked up, I couldn't help it, tears were streaming down my face. I nodded but then added, "I do love her, but I can't accept the situation as it is. She demeaned her husband and broke her vows. I am done with her. I just want a divorce." "Last question," Dwight said, turning the sheet of paper on his pad to expose a clean one. "As best you can, tell me what assets you guys have." I thought for a moment, mentally running down what assets we had. Then I explained that, as a rough estimation, we had about $3,500 in our checking account. We also had $44,000 in a savings account and a CD worth $220,000 plus interest. I explained that I had about $150,000 in my 401k. Chrissy had slightly less accumulated in her retirement plan from when she worked full-time at the hospital. Even though she hadn't worked as long as I had, the hospital benefits package was generally better than mine. However, surprisingly, my company offered a better healthcare plan, so we used that for the family. I thought for a moment and then mentioned that we had 2 cars which were in both our names. We of course had our house. However, we only bought this particular house a few years ago and had maxed out the loan. There wasn't much equity in it. "Okay, here's what I want you to do," Dwight said, looking like a man ready to go into battle. "The first thing is for you to draw out 1/2 of what you have in savings, checking, and the CD. Then I want you to put that money into a separate account in your name only." "I can't do anything with the CD because it's in both our names," I explained. "I can't cash that in without Chrissy's signature." "No problem," Dwight said as he began running numbers on his calculator. "Take $33,750 out of the savings account, then pay as many bills for your house as you can from the checking account. Cancel any joint credit cards you have and use the joint checking account to pay them off. Then apply for a new credit card in your name only." "I still have a credit card that I got before we were married," I said. "However, I don't use it much because our joint card gives us money back." "Even better," Dwight smiled. "You won't have to apply for a new card." Dwight quickly scribbled a list of instructions onto a notepad and handed it to me. "Right now, I want you to go out to my secretary and tell her to call Taylor Locksmith for you. Give them the address and have all the locks changed in your house. Then come back in here and I'll fill you in on our next steps." Miss Carlson had Taylor Locksmith on the phone quickly, and I gave them the address and was told they'd be out around noon. I then went back into Dwight Tucker's office. Dwight was just getting off the phone when I sat down. "We're in luck," Dwight said. "According to the clerk, if I fax my paperwork today, we'll be assigned Judge Johnson." "Why is that lucky?" I asked, confused. "He hates cheaters," Dwight answered with a smile. "He's an old-fashioned Bible Belt judge, and he hates spouses that cheat, be they men or women. Trust me, that works in our favor. If he hadn't been available, I probably would have had to do a little more tap dancing, but I'm sure we would have gotten what we wanted. However, Judge Johnson was a good friend of my father's. I know for sure he won't be upset if I call him at home." Dwight stood up and offered me his hand. I shook it gratefully. "Before you head home," Dwight instructed, "I want you to head out and get your bank stuff done. I'm going to prepare a petition for an emergency restraining order on your wife. She won't be permitted in your house or within 500 feet of you or your children. She's currently staying with her lover, and we know she's left your kids with him. That should help greatly with the restraining order. Weeks or months down the road, the order might be kicked out, but by then you should be firmly established in the family residence as the primary caregiver. By Friday, I'll have your wife served with divorce papers. Then we're going to have to sit back and see what your wife wants to do." For the first time since Chrissy had dropped her bomb on me, I felt like I had taken back my life and part of my dignity. The bank wasn't particularly busy, so I was able to get a cashier's check quickly for my share of the money and close our one joint credit card. They told me there was a balance of $537 on it. I paid the balance off from the checking account, then I paid the mortgage 2 months ahead. That took up another $2,600. There wasn't much left in the checking account. With the cashier's check in hand, I went down the street to another bank and opened a checking and savings account in my name only. With that done, I headed back home. When I got there, I found the kids watching television, so I loaded them into the car. When we rolled up to my in-laws' house, I saw Sam coming around the corner of his house from his workshop. He waved and headed back around the house. The kids piled out and headed after their grandfather. Once inside, Mary greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. A minute later, Sam came in and after washing his hands, he came out to greet me. "I'm sorry I have to tell you this," I apologized immediately. "This is hard for me to say." I took a deep breath and continued, "Chrissy is having an affair and I'm filing for a divorce." I don't believe you, Sam said sharply. Chrissy isn't the type of woman. What proof do you have? She told me, I said softly as tears started to slide down my face. At that point the back door opened and the kids came trooping in. Please stay outside for a few minutes, I told them. Why? Ron asked. Because I'm telling you to, I said more sharply than I meant to. When Ron saw the tears on my face, he immediately turned, pushing his siblings back out the door. She told you? Mary asked in disbelief. Yes, I said firmly, and a whole lot more. I then recounted the story of the previous evening, including the part where she was having sex and it was good. I also told them how she said that if I divorced her, she'd ruin me, and finally, how she didn't think any other woman would want me. They were shocked and Sam was angry. I still don't believe it, Sam said. I'm going to call her and put the call on speakerphone. After dialing his daughter's number and activating the speaker, Sam put the phone on the coffee table. Hey Daddy, Chrissy answered brightly. What can I do for you? Ron is here right now, Sam said and immediately asked, are you having an affair? There was a long pause. Then Chrissy demanded, what did he say? He said you were having sex with another man and that you were in love with this guy. It's complicated, Daddy, she pleaded. I'm trying to help this man. He suffered a terrible tragedy and I'm trying to help him. Sam's face turned bright red and through gritted teeth he asked, are you having sex with him or not? We've had sex, Chrissy admitted, but I still love Ron. I just can't abandon this man right now. I love him too. I was totally stunned by Chrissy's father. She had always been a daddy's girl and I just assumed Sam would make excuses for her. Chrissy, Sam's voice was a bit strangled at this point. I never thought my daughter would ever become an immoral woman. Daddy, please, was all that was heard as Sam pushed the disconnect button. A moment or two later the phone began to ring again and Mary reached to answer it. Leave it alone, Sam commanded, but Mary snatched it up and tried to answer anyway. Sam grabbed the phone out of her hand and threw it against the fireplace. I said leave it alone, he screamed at his wife. She was completely shocked by her husband's anger and backed up. I was even more shocked. Dad's silence filled the room as Sam and Mary tried to process what they had just learned. Finally, Sam came over to me and hugged me. Ron, I am so sorry. I don't even know what to say. I can't believe our daughter has done this to you. Anything we can do to help you, we will, and I mean anything at all. We will be there for you and the kids. I'll have Mary talk to our daughter later and let you know how that goes. Right now, I'm too angry to talk to her. After that, I had to leave to get back to the house for the locksmith. After loading the kids into my car, I hugged Sam and Mary and invited them for dinner where we could talk more about my problem. On the way home, Sally burst into tears. Are you and Mom getting a divorce? Where did you hear that? I demanded. For me, Ron said defiantly. I snuck back into the house and listened. I figured it was something bad. I just didn't figure it was that. I sighed and realized they had a right to know what was going on, but then the question was how to tell my kids about their mother without causing too much damage. Damn Chrissy, her selfishness was hurting the kids. I bet she never thought about that when she was climbing into bed with her new man. Unfortunately, it seems that your mother and I will be getting a divorce, I said softly. But why? Kay asked as he started to cry. Your mother has fallen in love with another man, I said simply. You mean she's having sex with another man? Sally said between her tears. I hate her. Sally, don't say that about your mother. I admonished, but my words felt hollow as those were my exact feelings right now. The locks were changed and none too soon. 10 minutes after the locksmith van left, Chrissy came roaring into the driveway. You had to tell my parents, didn't you? I'm sure you told them that I'm a 304 and a hooker. Chrissy screamed. I thought you loved me, Chrissy, I said sadly. I do love you with all my heart, but I will never accept that you're going to be screwing some other guy. You have no idea how much you hurt me when you told me that I was just an ugly middle-aged guy that no other woman would ever want to be with. In essence, you told me you're doing me a favor by staying with me out of pity. I can do without that. Not only did you do that, but you threatened to ruin me. Yet you dare to tell me you love me? You really need to take a good hard look at yourself, Chrissy. People who love each other don't do things like that. As for telling your parents, I continued, if you're so convinced that what you're doing is right, then it shouldn't matter that your parents know. Chrissy looked stricken after I laid my accusations on her. Okay, I'm sorry, she said, trying to apologize. I didn't mean to say those things. I was just angry at the moment because you called me a 304 and a hooker. Truly, Ron, to call your wife and the mother of your children those names? You promised to love, honor, and cherish me. Shame on you. If you truly loved me, you would accept the situation. I'm not leaving you for him. I just love him too, and I'm trying to help him. He's much younger than me and will eventually move on. Chrissy, I said, shaking my head slowly, if you're going to quote our wedding vows, you should include the part where you promise to forsake all others. And let me remind you that a married woman does not go out and open her legs for young men just because they're there. Besides, I have accepted that you are damaged goods and I am not going to have you in my life anymore. Like you said, accept it or don't, that's your choice. Chrissy turned red and seemed uncertain for a moment. Then her eyes narrowed and the arrogance was back. She was breathing hard and I figured she was trying to figure out her next argument for why I should accept the situation. At that moment, I wished to God that I had no love for her at all, but I still loved her deeply. Look, Ron, Chrissy said with a tone she used with the children when she wanted them to behave. Stop being an idiot. I'm your wife, you know me. I love you and I will come back to you when this man is well again. I was so sad, but I had had enough. My love for her had died and was now replaced by pure hatred. No, Chrissy, I don't know you. My wife and the mother of my children was a warm and loving person who would never cheat on me. You are a person I don't know. For all I know, this is just one of many affairs you've had over the years. I can't be sure of anything about you anymore. Who knows if you are regularly opening your legs for every Tom, Dick and Harry? Chrissy's eyes narrowed and her face flushed. I could tell she was furious and about to explode. This is not an affair, and this is the first person I've ever had sex with since we were married. This man has been badly hurt, and I am going to help him whether you agree or not. Suit yourself, I said. I don't want this and will never accept it. Not only that, but because I no longer trust anything about you, I intend to have a DNA test done on the kids to make sure they really are mine. You're a total a-hole, Chrissy spat at me. I can see that you intend to make this into something very ugly. Just remember what I told you will happen if you try to divorce me. I would rather die in poverty alone than ever be with a woman who has no morals, I said, looking down from the porch at my wife. I shook my head. I could take very little solace from the fact that she had no idea of the storm that was probably going to descend on her. I think she had convinced herself that she could have her cake and eat it too, and there would be no consequences. At this time, the sheriff's vehicle pulled up. The deputy got out of his car and approached Chrissy. Are you Chrissy Jameson? The deputy asked. Yes, I am, Chrissy responded with confusion. Ma'am, this is a restraining order, the deputy said, handing her the court order. It says that you cannot go into that house and you have to stay 500 feet away. Do you understand? But that's my home. Chrissy sputtered. All my things are inside. Ma'am, I'll allow you 15 minutes in the house to gather your stuff, the deputy said, looking up at me. I nodded. Mr. Jameson will stay out here, the officer continued. I'd rather take my children out in the backyard if that's all right, I asked. But I want to see my children. Chrissy was frantic by now. Ma'am, the deputy said, getting nervous that the situation was about to get out of hand. The reason for this.